Every year, more and more roller coaster models are created around the world, and where some of them are extremely popular, others just never get talked about. So today, I'm going to be counting down the top 10 roller coaster models which we need more of. Number 10, the Chance Rides Hyper GTX coaster. Still to this day, only one of these roller coasters have ever been built, and that is of course Lightning Run. However, even though another is set to open later this year, it still took them a long time to realize how cool these look. So what does the Hyper GTX have to offer? So far, we can only really base it off Lightning Run, and just from the POV, it looks like it's one of the best roller coasters ever built. It features a ton of airtime and also has one of the best first drops. However, even though it doesn't feature any inversions, it was recently announced by the manufacturer that the 2022 coaster will include them, and as much as this looks to be more focused on inversions, it does still look to have some pretty good airtime, and that's the reason why this model makes the list. Number 9, the Intermittent Wing Coaster. So far, only 2 of these roller coasters have ever been built, with the first one being Skyrush at Hershey Park, and where the coaster mainly focuses on intensity and also airtime, Flying Aces focuses more on inversions, and ever since its opened back in 2016, it has been claimed as one of the best roller coasters to have ever been built, and as much as this has got nothing but great reviews, Skyrush is quite the opposite, and what I mean by that is that people either hate it or love it, and as much as I haven't ridden it yet, I have to say that it still looks amazing for what it is, but as previously mentioned, over the last decade, only 2 of these have been built. However, I hope to see some more popping up in the near future. Number 8, the Rocky Mountain Construction Single Rail Coaster. Ever since the company debuted their first roller coaster, it immediately became a hit to the public. However, in 2018 they decided to build their first ever single rail coaster, and this came in the form of Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster. And ever since this has been built, this coaster's got nothing but great reviews, and as a result, RMC went on to build 3 more of them and one on the way in 2022. However, the reason why it made the list is due to how the coaster model has only been going to the bigger parks. This was something which RMC neither the public was really expecting, and that's due to them wanting to focus these more onto smaller parks. However, they still look like some great roller coasters. Number 7, the Themack Extreme Spinning Coaster. Ever since Time Traveler opened back in 2018, this coaster model's got nothing but praise, and this is due to it being a spinning coaster whilst also featuring inversions, airtime and launches. However, just after this got built, people were wondering where their next coaster would go, and this unfortunately went on for way longer than most people were expecting. However, in 2021, their second extreme spinning coaster opened, and that was of course Ride to Happiness. This would basically be Time Traveler, but just on a bigger scale, and even though this has now been claimed as a top 3 roller coaster, there still hasn't been any signs of their next coaster. However, even though not much has been built so far, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple more of these in the next 5 years. Number 6, the SNS Science Thrust Air Coaster. Back in 2001, the company also King's Dominion decided to build their first ever thrust air coaster, and this came in the form of Hypersonic XLC, and what was so great about this coaster was that it used a compressed air launch. This would basically be a much more powerful version of an LIM launch. However, later that year, Fujitsu Highland in Japan decided to build Dodo Dumper, and this was the exact same launch. However, it did have a longer ride time. However, due to the version at King's Dominion causing loads of issues, they did decide to close it down in the 2007 season. But even though one of these coasters still operate today, it has now been over 2 decades since we've seen a new one open. Number 5, the Intermittent prefabricated wooden coaster. So far, only 4 of these coasters have ever been built, with the first one opening back in 2001 under the name of Colossus. This was a huge hit to the public, and some even called it the best roller coaster. However, in 2003, Leedsburg decided to build Boulder. This would basically be a much smaller version of Colossus. However, it does still let us pack a punch. But over 3 years later, Six Flags Great Adventure went on to build El Toro. This coaster has got nothing but praise for some of the best airtime moments. However, once again, Intamin shocked us in 2008 with T-Express at Everland. This would be a mix between all 3 of their other coasters, but what made it so great for most guests was that it was located on a hill, but nearly 14 years later we still haven't seen any plans for another roller coaster. Number 4, the Mack Hypercoaster. Ever since the company opened their first hypercoaster back in 2016, only 3 have been built. However, you can't doubt how amazing they look, with the first one being Flash at Lure Adventure. This coaster is most well known for having one of the tallest inversions to have ever been created. However, along with this inversion, it looks to feature a ton of airtime with also one of the best layouts. However, due to the success of this coaster, in 2017 they decided to open DC Rivals Hypercoaster at Warner Bros. Movie World. This would basically be Flash, but with a much longer layout. However, just 1 year later they decided to build their most recent hypercoaster, with Hypercoaster at Land of Legends theme park. But even since this coaster has opened, we've just got rumours, and that's the reason why this model had to make the list. Number 3, the SNS Science 4th Dimension Coaster. So far, only 2 of these roller coasters have been built around the world. However, even though we haven't seen many of these coasters, the 2 that were built have been claimed as some of the best roller coasters on the planet, with the first one being Iga at Fuji-Q Highland. Built back in 2006, this coaster has got nothing but great reviews, and that's all just how intense the coaster is. However, due to the success of this coaster and also the ride model, SNS Science went on to build one other coaster of its kind, and this was of course Dino Condor at China's Dinosaur Park. In my opinion, this is like the better of the 2, however you can't still doubt how amazing they both look. But the reason why I believe that another park hasn't decided to build one is due to how expensive they are to build. Number 2, the B&M Gear Coaster. Built back in 2012, Leviathan at Canada's Wonder as the first ever B&M Gear Coaster. This was basically going to be the Hypercoaster on a much bigger scale, and ever since this coaster was opened, it has been rated really high by the public. However, in 2015 they decided to build Fury 325 at Carowinds. This would be what many would call a near perfect roller coaster, with low to the ground elements, airtime, and also one of the best first drops. There is no doubt why so many people call it a top 5 roller coaster. So after the success of Fury 325, their most recent gear coaster went under the name of Orion, and even though most people loved it, a lot of guests found it a disappointment. However, with only 3 of these coasters in the last 10 years, there is no way that I could have left it off the list. Number 1, the aerodynamics hypercoaster. Some of you may be very surprised to see this at the top spot. However, due to the model nearly going extinct, I knew that I had to include it on the list. But what made this coaster model go downhill? The first one was built back in 1989 with Magnum SL 200 at Cedar Point. This was the first ever hypercoaster, reaching a height of just over 200 feet. However, 5 years later, Aerodynamics decided to build 3 more of these hypercoasters. This was a great decision for all of these parks. However, for the last remaining years of the company, we didn't see any more of these get built. But even though all of these coasters look amazing, as of 2022, only 2 of these roller coasters are still operating today. However, I just wish that Aerodynamics could have carried on with this awesome coaster model. I hope you have enjoyed me counting down the top 10 roller coaster models which you need more of. If you have, make sure to leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.